Hey there, algebra folks. We're going to be looking today at writing equations with percents, ratios, and proportions. So percents, ratios, and proportions you worked with in pre-algebra. We haven't seen them a whole lot. We're going to be focused on a couple of different types of problems here. Interest problems, which is where our percents are going to come in right here. Interest problems, I equals PRT. And ratio/proportion problems, which is where your proportions and your ratios are going to come in. So let's start with talking about percents. A percent is a part of 100. That's what per and cent mean. Per part of, cent 100. The percent equation, you used a proportion and you should have also used an equation in pre-algebra, but if you haven't, percent equation is the percent as a decimal, which is also called the rate, rate, times the base, which is the whole value, and on the other side, you get the percentage or part. Part equals rate times base, or rate times base equals part. For interest problems, we'll be using this equation, I equals PRT, which you should have learned last year. Okay, write an expression for each, or an equation for each one. So let's start with the first one. We have 18% of the total B. 18% of the total amount B. Or of the bill, I should say, B. So 18%, when we write the percent as a decimal, is going to be 0.18. Get in the habit of putting that 0 in front of the decimal point. It's just good math practice. When we say of, that's multiplying. To find 18% of something, I would multiply this value times that something. And since it's algebra, I don't need a dot or parentheses or a time sign or any of that. It's going to be 0.18 B, or 1800ths times B, or 0.18 times B. Number 2, the cost of M dollars worth of goods, including 5% sales tax. So this is a little bit trickier. This is a great thing for you to be able to use when you're out shopping. So let's think about this real quick. 1 times M gives me M. 5% of M, because that's our sales tax, actually it's 6% here in this part of Virginia. It's 5.5% in other parts, but it's 6% here in Virginia. 6% of M gives you the tax. How can I, in one step, go get the total with tax? Well, I can take those two numbers right here, and I can combine them. I can take my 1 and my 0.06, and I can combine them. So I can make it 1.06 M. And that's going to give you 1 times M, which is the cost of the goods you're dealing with here, and then 0.06 times M, which is the tax. So together it gives you cost with tax. So it's total plus tax, all together in one, okay? And so I'll fix that. Should have been 6% sales tax, huh? Because we have 6% sales tax here in this part of Virginia. Good. All right, 25% of the teachers, T, went to the meeting. There were 15 teachers at the meeting. So this one is an equation instead of an expression. The number of people at the meeting was 15. If it's 25% of the teachers, first I'm going to take that and make it 0.25, percent turned to a decimal, and we're going to multiply that times the number of teachers, T. So 0.25 T equals 15. All right, let's look at some I equals PRT questions. So interest equals principal times rate times time. That's your I equals PRT equation. So we're going to do an example here. You've invested $500 3 years ago. So I automatically know my 3 years, that's my time. My $500, that's my P for principal. You now have $650. What had been the interest rate for your account? Well, you have $650, so first thing we have to do is take out that original investment to see how much you earned in interest. So we earned $150 in interest, and that is I. So I equals PRT, we're going to plug these values into the equation we have. I for interest, that's 150, is equal to the principal, 500, times the interest rate, we don't know, so R, times the time, which is 3. And now I'll solve the equation that results. So this is really more using a formula than writing an equation, since you already have the equation written for you. So that's 150 equals 1,500 R, and we can divide both sides by 1,500. And we get 1/10, or 0.1, which is R, 1/10 is R. So if I'm going to change that then to a percent, remember that I take my decimal and multiply by 100, moving the decimal point twice to the right, 10%. So the interest rate for my account, for my investment, was 10%. Having a hard time drawing a little teeny circle there. There we go. So that's a simple investment problem. But investments get much more tricky than that. So we're going to look at writing an equation and writing it only. We'll do the solving in class for a similar problem that's a little more complicated. Multiple account investment problem. So we're going to set this up. We are not going to solve it. So let's start from the beginning. You have $50,000 to invest. It's a nice little daydream. And 2 funds in which you'd like to invest, so mutual funds. The fund held by Risky Bank yields 14% interest, while the fund at Dull Bank yields only 6% interest, hence the names. Risky because it's a higher risk, so it yields a better return, and Dull because it's a slightly lower risk and yields a less return. If you want to earn $4,500 in interest income this year, how much money should you put into each account? All right, so this is quite a bit more complicated. So let's start by describing our unknowns. We're going to make X represent the money invested at 14%. And the money invested at 6%, we can't use a different variable. Can you think of a way? Okay, so money invested at 6%. Can you think of a way to say what's left after I've invested X dollars at 1%, at one of the percents that we're given? Well, if I had $50,000, then that would be $50,000, 50,000 minus X. So if X is one amount for the investment, 50,000 minus X would be the other amount for the investment. All right, so that's a start. Now, let's think about our equation here. Our equation is I equals PRT. We have to tweak it a little bit. We have 2 different investments. So we're going to have I equals PRT for one investment plus the PRT for the other investment. So the first one will be the 14% and the second one will be the 6%. We already know the interest we're trying to earn here. We're trying to earn $4,500. So that's the I equals. The first account, the principal we're investing at 14% is X, because that's what we defined it as right up here. We defined this as X. The rate that we're using is 14%. Remember to change it to a decimal. And then the time we're using here is 1 year. Okay, so just this year, 1 year. So that's the amount for the 14% investment. For the other investment, we have slightly larger space for the principal because we're going to use our expression that we wrote above, 50,000 minus X. Our rate is 0.06, and then again the time is 1. So as I said earlier, we're going to solve this in class. It's actually not that complicated. The writing of the equation is the toughest part on this one. All right, so let's remember we're going to solve that in class. So solve in class. Put a little star next to it. You know you'll probably have to remind me, and we'll take a look at that in class. Let's look at some ratios and proportions. All right, a ratio is a comparison of 2 numbers by division. That's the fraction bar is the division. A proportion, you'll recall, is an equation made up of 2 fractions set equal to one another. In order to solve a proportion, you're going to cross multiply, set the products equal to one another. That's where most kids get confused on proportions. And then you'll solve the resulting equation. Practice with these. If you're good and you know how to do this, pause it, try them, and then come back. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and write it all the way out. Let's start with this first one. Cross multiply. N times 20, 8 times 5. So 20n equals 8 times 5, which is 40. Divide both sides. N equals 2. 5 out of 20 is to 2 out of 8. Okay, how about this next one? Again, cross multiply. Cross multiply here, m times 6, negative 9 times 5. So m times 6 is 6m. Negative 9 times 5 is negative 45. Divide both sides by 6. And note that your answer is going to be negative, which makes sense, because only over here a negative over a negative will equal a positive fraction. And if I take negative 45 over 6 and simplify it, I get negative 15 over have it written down. Negative 15 over 2? Yeah, that's right. Divide them both by 3. So negative 15 halves. All right, next question. This time, when I cross multiply, I'm going to have to distribute. I'm going to have to distribute. So 5 times the quantity, n minus 2, equals 72. Okay, 6 times 12, 72? Yeah, that's right. So that's 5n minus 10 equals 72. We can add 10 to each side. 5n equals 82. And then we can divide both sides by 5. And frankly, 82 over 5 is perfectly fine for me. But if you have, let's see, 16 and 2/5, that's also acceptable. Okay, and the last one, same idea. Same idea. So we're going to cross multiply, but we have to distribute. So a proportion is best solved by cross multiplying. Now in the very first example over there in green, you could probably go in and figure it out mentally, which is fine. I doubt that's going to be possible over here, which is why you have to know how to cross multiply. All right, let's keep going. 3z minus 12 when I distribute on the left. 6z plus 8 when I distribute on the right. And if I now subtract 3z from each side, I'm going to have negative 12 equals 3z plus 8. I can subtract 8 from each side and have negative 20 equals 3z. And divide, z equals negative 20 thirds, or negative, negative 6 and 2/3. Okay, so cross multiply to solve your proportions. Let's look at some word problems that involve proportions and ratios. All right, so a word problem with a ratio. If 1 pound of pasta salad serves 14 people, pasta salad, how much pasta salad is needed for a picnic with 49 people? This is a very straightforward proportion. 5 pounds of pasta salad is to 14 people, as I don't know how many pounds of pasta salad is to 49 people. So you're going to take the relationship you see in the problem and organize it top to bottom. Same thing on the top, same thing on the bottom. And now we just cross multiply and solve. So 14 times x, 14x. 5 times 49. 5 times 49 is 245. And when we divide, it may not come out evenly, but it's not an ugly answer. It's 17.5. So we need 17.5 pounds of pasta salad. That is a lot of pasta salad in order to feed 49 people. Let's take a look at another example of a ratio with in a word problem. So this is directly a ratio, and it's a triple ratio. Don't fret, that's not that confusing. Let's look at it. The lengths of the sides of a triangle are in the ratio of 3 to 4 to 5. If the perimeter is 24 centimeters, find the length of each side. What you're going to do with a problem like this is you're going to take each of those numbers in that ratio, and you're going to tack an x onto each one. Because just because they're in the ratio of 3 to 4 to 5 doesn't mean you're dealing with 3, 4, and 5. You're dealing with 3 numbers that are in a ratio of 3 to 4 to 5. It could be 9, 12, 15. It could be 30, 40, 50. It just all depends on what the perimeter is here. So if I put the x on each one and set them, add them up, because that's what perimeter is all the sides added together, I can now solve this equation. So we have 5, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 12x equals 24, and x equals 2. Now you can't just stop there. Let's go back and think about what's up with this triangle. Now pretend it doesn't look equilateral. There's my definition of the variable. There's my defining the variable here. Because for 3 sides of the triangle, it's 3 times this number I got, 4 times the number, and 5 times the number. Which means my solution is that the sides are 6 centimeters, 8 centimeters, and 10 centimeters. Last problem in the video. The ratio of boys to girls enrolled in chemistry this year is 5 to 4. If the total number of students taking chemistry, that's just a typo. Let's fix that real quick. If the total number of students just taking chemistry, no A, is 981, how many boys and girls are enrolled in chemistry? We're going to write a proportion. Let's start with B equals number of boys. Do not use G to be number of girls. Instead, use an expression including G. Well, if there's 981 kids and B of them are boys, how can I find the number of girls? It would be 981 minus B. Now take your ratio 5 to 4 and put it in the fraction 5 on the top and 4 on the bottom. If that's the ratio of boys to girls, take your expression for boys, put it on the top. Take your expression for girls, put it on the bottom. And now you have a proportion you can solve. If I cross multiply here, I'm going to get 5 times that quantity, 981 minus b, and 4 times b. So 5 times 981 minus b equals 4 times b. When I distribute that 5 through the parentheses, we get 4,905 minus 5b equals 4b. And just like we've been doing on all the equations we solve, add 5b to each side, and you will have the result 4,905 equals 9b. Divide by 9, divide by 9. And it does come out to be 545. So there are 545 boys. And how do I now go about finding the number of girls? Use the expression we wrote out when we defined a variable. That's a big use of defining the variable, guys. Oh, I dropped my papers. That's a big use of defining a variable. You can go back and you can see right in there, right in that question, where you were supposed to be looking to find the number of girls. So 981 minus b, which comes out to, I done lost my paper. Which comes out to, well, let's do the math. 981 minus 545, so that's 11, that's a 6, that's a 7, that's a 3, 436. Hopefully I did that right. And that's that for ratios and proportions in algebra. So you will be drawing on some of this in class, and I want you to be thinking about what we did and make sure that you jot down any important questions you'd like to ask when you get to class next. See you guys tomorrow or whenever after you watch this video. I'll just see you in class.